Hello guys, and welcome to set up this April bullet journal theme with me. My name is Anna, and today we're gonna walk through this dreamy spring setup together. If you want to see how the previous month's Paris theme turned out, I'll post the final flip through on my Instagram in the end of this month. But yeah, we're gonna jump right into this first gouache painting of this flower field and pond scenery. I used the Canson cold press watercolor paper, then this cup gouache paint set, and these very basic brushes. All the tools I'm using in this video will be listed and linked to the description bar, so even if I don't mention something, you'll find all the details from there. But yeah, I started this painting with a quick pencil sketch, which you can barely see here. Anyway, as we're gonna use gouache this time, I don't think the pencil sketch is that important, because if we mess up, we can always correct it by just adding more paint on top. So for me, the sketch was mainly for just figuring out the different elements in the picture, where's our horizon line, and so on. But after that, we are ready to start the actual painting process. I first blended all my colors on this separate half moon palette, which I got from a small Etsy shop. And I thought I would start from the sky. And I think you might notice that I tried to use a little bit more color this month. I still wanted everything in this picture to have this kind of muted pastel-y undertone, because that's what I picture when I'm thinking about a dreamy aesthetic. But I tried to not shy away from using these lilac, pink, and orangey tones, which in the end will give a really interesting look to this whole photo. Anyway, if you feel like it's often intimidating for you to start your painting and you have no idea where to go first, don't worry, you're not alone with that. Honestly, the first layers always look pretty messy and basically something that a 6-year-old would draw, but you just need to get that phase out of the way without judging anything too much and just trust the process. For me, the paintings start to come alive when you just keep layering different tones and building that intensity and contrast, and also when you slowly start adding all those final details on top of everything. And by the way, all of this takes time as well. For me, usually nothing happens even in the first 2 hours. I think this painting took about 5 to 6 hours for me, so I hope that gives you some perspective. I know these speeded, edited videos give a completely wrong idea of how long these actually take in real life. But anyway, I was struggling a bit with the colors in this painting because I didn't have a very clear picture of what I wanted from this. But I think that's also one of the great benefits of gouache or acrylic paints over watercolors, let's say, because you're always able to paint over everything and nothing's really set in stone. Some really light colors might require a bit of building if you have a dark color underneath. And also with gouache, you might still need to take some breaks to let the first layers dry before adding too much on top. For once, I really tried to keep this painting looking more like an actual painting. I think I often try to go for more realistic style, and it's sometimes hard for me to leave details more unfinished like this. But I really tried to do it here. I hope you can see that, especially in this swan, rather than trying to create a perfect look of the body and feathers, I was playing with different colors here and just added some overall shapes to it. Especially the little guys here just basically got a darker peak and some random messy strokes. And I think this just shows you that there are so many different ways to draw things, and the quote-unquote realistic style is just one out of countless other options. Then I think another thing that this painting taught me was that light details really need that darker background in order to stand out. I noticed this especially when I was painting the water. I was trying to add these water lily leaves on top. I was struggling with it first, but then just thought, screw it, and added this almost scary looking darkness to the water, which in the end didn't even stand out that much. And after that, it was so much easier to paint these lighter leaves on top, and they really stood out from the water. Then in the end, adding some white dots often helps to give a more dreamy and detailed look to a painting in my opinion. So I definitely used that in the water and also in the flower field and the willow tree as well that I painted as the last step. By the way, if you feel like a whole painting like this is too challenging or time consuming for you, you could always just choose one part or element here to try out. For example, you could leave out everything else and just focus on the swan, or you could leave the whole pond out of the picture and just create a pretty flower field with a cloudy sky. I just always hope to offer you many different ideas in these videos to freely explore what you feel like creating. I know many of my stuff might be a bit extra, and honestly, if I wasn't doing this kinda as my job, I probably wouldn't have time to create super time-consuming themes like this either. So yeah, as always, feel free to just pick out a thing or two and let your imagination guide you. Then a small commercial break, as always. I'll add this painting and this whole theme to my online shop, and this time they are actually already up when this video is going live. And if you haven't visited the shop for a while, there were also many new products added last month, so if that's something you're interested in, definitely go check it out. The link is in the description. But now back to the journal. So after I attached this painting with my double-sided tape, I moved on from it to create this almost scrapbooking-inspired title here. So this was just basically me exploring different things. First I added some paint on this black dotted paper. This is from my Archer and Olive notepad. So I created some sort of very loose flowers and then wrote the April title here. And after that, I decided to use this technique that I've shown a few times in the past. If you don't happen to own any colorful paper, but you have a printer at home, what I like to do is create these simple shape collections and print them on a white paper. You could also just use colorful pens, washi tapes, or graph paper. And then from some different colors, I created this arrangement. I also decided to add a layer of this old text looking washi tape underneath everything. I think you don't need to own this tape. This would be pretty easy to create yourself as well, just by scribbling something to the page. But that's how I eventually made this title. Don't know if it turned out the way I imagined, but it's okay. I'll link the shape collection for you so you can go and download that for free if you'd like to use the same colors as I did. But anyway, I know we've been on this first page for a while, so let's finally move on and start to set up the monthly overview page. I started here from the actual journaling content, just to give you a little break from all the painting, and I actually decided to not include a big monthly calendar this time. I sometimes feel like it's such a waste to have a big calendar like that, and then I have like 3 appointments made there. So this time I went with this small calendar and just left some room under it to list the most important dates that I would have written out on a bigger calendar. I'd be interested to know if you use your monthly calendars and what kinds of things you write there. Maybe if it was combined with something else, I'd get more use out of it as well. But anyway, I went with some cute colors here again. Very dreamy, very spring appropriate. You could use this bottom part of the page for anything you need if this setup doesn't fit your life that well. So always feel free to switch things up and give everything your own twist. But then let's get back to drawing, and this time I wanted to create this long horizontal cloud painting with some more soft pastel colors. I used the same paper and paints and started by pretty much covering this whole thing with some background layers. I think I started with a little bit too bright colors, so you'll see me going over everything again with a little bit more muted colors after I let this first layer dry. But then I just started to pretty much experiment with some color variations and round cloud shapes all over this paper. I've never really painted clouds like this, so it was definitely a learning experience for me. But again, I think the more time you spend on a painting like this, the better results you'll get in return. You see me repainting some areas here a few times because I just couldn't get it to work. Especially the darker parts gave me a hard time. I'd say that blending too many colors together might make everything a little bit muddy, and that definitely happened for me here on some parts. But I personally don't think that's the worst thing that can happen, especially when you're just painting for fun and trying to learn something new. I think my goal here was to kind of create this gradient effect from the blue tones to more of these orange and pink colors to make this look a little bit more interesting again. And then I used a good amount of white to create the brighter areas to the high points of the clouds. I also tried my best to blend those a little bit to the background, since the look of clouds is often very soft and blurry instead of having very defined edges to the colors. But then after this painting was finally done, I got the white borders out and I also cut this in half to attach it to my journal. And then as the very last step, I still added some white details on top of everything with a white marker. I drew this small moon here and then just added some more dots and sparkle to add that dreamy fairy dust effect to this painting. In the end, I don't know if this spread matched that well with the previous one, honestly. I almost felt like any spread from this layout could have been their own theme. But at the same time, that was kind of what I felt like doing this month. You know, sometimes rather than following a very strict theme, I just feel like painting whatever I want. And then I just hope that in the end, I can somehow make them match together. But anyway, let's move on, shall we? And next, it's time to set some more planning related stuff. As you guys know, April starts the second quarter of this year, and I always like to reserve some space for the quarter planning. I feel like 3 months is very often more realistic time frame for any larger goals than 1 month. So always at the start of a new quarter, I like to look back to my yearly goals and see if there's something I could choose to tackle during these following 3 months. But before all that, you can see me experimenting more with these ripped paper titles here. I think it looked a little bit weird at first, but then after adding the title and other decorations on this page, I actually really liked how this turned out. I also think that something like this is a fairly easy decoration idea to play with, especially if you don't have time or energy to draw anything. And I decided to use the same black paper for the title again, because I thought it really made the text stand out against the other colors in the background. But then after the title and the top decorations, I moved on to the content of these pages that I kept pretty simple. So in this first box, I can write out some thoughts I have about the yearly goals, now that there's already been 3 months since setting them. And then after spending some time on that, I'll choose 2 business and 2 personal life related goals that I'll try to mostly focus on during this whole season. And I would especially recommend you to consider setting a spread like this now in this springtime, because the spring is often described to have this very symbolic meaning of rebirth and new beginnings. So this time of the year just offers a perfect opportunity to start something new and maybe take action in your life. But then moving on to the next page, and here I separated the months a little bit more. So I'll obviously focus mostly on the April stuff this month, and anything beyond that will be just some rough guidelines and ideas of what I'd like to get done. I often like to use these bullet point lists because I think they force me to come up with some concrete action steps rather than more abstract plans that are maybe a little bit harder to track. But then after that, we can move on to this last corner of this spread, where I first added some more of these colorful papers. I thought that the page would look a little bit more balanced this way. But then I figured this was a perfect opportunity to paint something I've gotten so many requests from you guys over the course of my videos, which are butterflies. I realized I've never included butterflies in any theme in the past, and they kind of went very well with the whole dreamy spring vibe. So I decided to paint some on this piece of watercolor paper again. You could also do this directly to the notebook, but I didn't want to paint over the colorful papers that much. Anyway, I started with some rough sketches again, and there are honestly so many different ways to draw butterflies, so this is definitely not the only shape option. And then when it comes to the coloring, I decided to paint these with the same gouache paints just to keep everything a little bit more cohesive. I think it definitely helped to think about the structure of the wings a little bit, so not just kind of drawing the outlines, but also adding some of these lines in the middle to get the feel of the direction of the strokes and so on. But then I just started to freestyle the colors here again. I changed my course a few times, but mainly I'd say that it looked a little bit better to make the outer corners of the wings a bit darker than the middle parts. Again, you could definitely play with different wing shapes and even add some patterns here, but I decided to keep this more simple this time. And then as the final details, I decided to just add some white dots all over the wings, kind of to add a little bit prettier look to these butterflies. I painted 3 of these in total using very similar shape and technique, just switching the colors a little bit. And then I finally cut them out of the paper and glued them in this bottom corner here. I think the white border made them stand out from the background, and overall I especially ended up liking all the colors on this spread. But anyway, then let's move on, and I actually left this next spread empty for now. I personally want to use this to showcase my new washi tape collection that I designed with the washi tape shop. You can find the collection from their website. It's called Spring Memories, but actually my own physical collection is still stuck in the mail, so I couldn't get it yet. But when I finally get my hands on it, I'll add the tapes on this page just to have a nice memory. It was such a special opportunity for me, and I was so grateful. They wanted to work with me on their artist collaboration project. So yeah, for all of my washi tape lovers out there, I also have a 10% affiliate discount code for their whole shop. They have an amazing collection and all the tapes are so high quality, so I definitely recommend you to check it out. But that's that, you can just skip this page at home. And now let's move on to the weekly setup. So I decided to create another one of these Dutch door weekly layouts because they are just so easy and fun to use throughout the month. First of all, they are super fast to set up, but you still have room on this page to create something a little bit more special. So after cutting off the top and bottom part of these next few pages, I just made a quick title here again. So I decided to follow with the whole cut out title thing, but this time I decided to use this green paper instead of the black one. After that, I decided to use these furthest pages for my habit trackers, and I kind of divide these into the morning habits and the nighttime habits this month. I kind of have a morning routine, at least from Monday to Friday, so I think having these morning habits here together will help out with that as well. And then the nighttime habits are more something that you can check before going to bed or maybe on the next morning. Then next I set up the first 1.5 weeks of April. This first half page here fit the first 4 days perfectly. And then I think I'll just squeeze the last 5 days next to the nighttime habit page. But anyway, I typically use a ruler for these kind of boxes, but for some reason I felt like drawing these without one this time. They don't maybe look as clean, but I thought the round look really went together nicely with the rest of this theme. But after the weekly section, we now have this whole bottom part of this page that we can freely decorate here. So I decided to go with some more flowers and create this almost flower field painting here. I was honestly supposed to do something more simple here, but after I added these first layers of dark cream paint, I kind of realized there was no turning back and I'd really need to do some layering to get this to work somehow. And I decided to paint this directly onto the notebook this time. I found that the gouache paints work pretty well with the notebook paper because you don't really need that much water or blending with them. And I think in general, with this style of painting, you can get so far with just these easy tapping motions. So you don't really need to go for any longer stripes or try to draw any small details. Instead, if you just keep tapping and layering different colors together, I think you'll often get a very pretty result. Well, I don't know if these flowers were the prettiest by any means, but it kind of works to create this almost messy and imperfect look. And I think it makes everything much easier, much more beginner friendly, and also a little bit less time consuming. I tried to keep the lower part of the field a little bit darker, and then eventually ended up adding just lots of these individual strokes and some messy dots and flowers everywhere. I think it definitely helps to own a super thin brush for this type of painting, and you also need a really light hand and fast strokes to create those very thin grass-like lines. But yeah, after the painting, that finally finished this weekly layout. I thought maybe the top part of the spread looked a little bit empty now, but I decided to move on anyway, so we can finally set up the last spread of this April layout. So this spread will be for the monthly review that I always fill in the end of each month. Kind of to look back at everything and collect my thoughts, as well as write down some memories. I think these spreads are often the most fun to look back to as well. But anyway, I didn't want to create anything super time consuming here anymore, so I kind of went with this similar ripped paper appearance to the top. I also used this same old textile washi tape, kind of to at least attempt to tie everything together with the cover spread. I know this whole thing was a little bit all over the place, but I really hope you can at least take many new different ideas from it. But anyway, after the title, I usually like to include this scale thing on these monthly review pages. So I'll basically review the previous month on these 5 different scales, where the center line is kind of the middle 0 point. And then after that, I set up these 2 boxes for the struggles and successes of the month. Then moving on to the next page, and here I just started with one open-ended question. I usually like to have at least one on these spreads, like what's currently on my mind or something like that. And then as the very last thing, I wanted to set up this April favorites section here, where I can list some of my favorite things at the moment. I think these are especially the things that are so fun to look back to and see how much your style and preferences change over time. But yeah, I think that finally finishes this April dreamy spring layout. I really hope you guys like this theme, and I'd also love to hear if you have some theme requests for this spring and summertime. I already have a pretty long list of ideas, so I can't promise to include every request, but I always get so much inspiration from your comments, and it definitely helps me to think outside of the box if I get stuck with something. If this was the first video you saw from this channel and you'd like to see more in the future, definitely consider subscribing. But I think that's pretty much it. Thank you guys so much for watching as always. I hope you're having an amazing day or night wherever you are, and see you in my next one. Bye bye!